Well, Luca Getavecchi is here. Luca, how are you doing in Italy?
Yes, it's okay. Thank you. Ciao a tutti.
Good to see you. Thank you for joining us
Yes,
today.
I am in my home. You know that now in Italy is midnight. And,
Yes.
But the situation that you know is not easy, but in Tuscany and in Montepulciano, fortunately, we stay well. We have not big problems, not many deaths, not big problems. The life could be normally for the health problem, but there are from government the restriction and we must stay home. Fortunately, we are working. We have many vineyards around to us to work. We can exit, we can have normal life, not very different from other time, but this is not an easy moment for the world.
No, and Italy suffered very badly. I mean, there's been a huge loss of life in Italy in the last couple of months. We've been, obviously paying attention here on the news, and it's unfortunate. We send our condolences to you and all your countrymen on what's going on, but hopefully we're at the tail end of the first phase of this, I guess. I don't know if there'll be a second wave or whatever, but it's good to know that hopefully life will get back to normal relatively soon. Montepulciano, people are pretty spread out and distanced anyways, I would think. It's not a major city like a New York, so I would think that the incidence, maybe let us know, what is the incidence of people contracting the COVID there? Is it lower than the rest of Italy, or?
No, in Montepulciano the people must stay home. We have the lucky to work outside in the vineyards. We have our job is open, but many other jobs that are not collocated in agriculture, for example, are closed. But if you see Montepulciano now, any people is in the way. All the people stay home.
Okay.
We are lucky because we don't live in an apartment. We have a big place around to us, and in the small village around Siena, there are not many problems of COVID-19.
Okay, that's good to know. Excellent. And you have Patrizia here today, your export manager. So thank you both for dialing in at midnight in Italy and being with us today. This is one of a series of these that we've been holding on Fridays. We've been locked down in Vancouver. I think this is our 5th or 6th week of being locked down, so we're a little bit behind you. Vancouver's pretty spread out, so people socially distance here on a regular basis. We're not, like I mentioned, New York City before. So our incidence of COVID has been lower than the more populated spots in Canada, like Toronto and Montreal and other parts of Quebec. But we're still under a little looser regiment than what you've gone through in Italy, where we've been watching where you can't leave your home at all. We've been able to still have essential services, and we've been able to go to the grocery store and things like that. So it hasn't been as big a lockdown, but then again, we haven't suffered the same amount of loss. So we've been lucky, I guess, is the best way to explain it.
Yes, now the situation is very different from the last time you visited Montepulciano, yes. And in Vancouver, how is the situation?
It's pretty good. I think there's, I can't remember what our count is as far as people that currently have it, but it's, I think it's under 2,000. Jump in, anybody that's got the numbers. And I think we've lost somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 people or 60 people. So in Vancouver and or the province of BC. So I don't think our numbers are nearly as bad. In Quebec, it's been quite a bit worse, and Ontario's been quite a bit worse as well. And where it seems to have hit us is particularly is in seniors' homes. So people that are older that live in homes have been highly infected. And then recently we had an outbreak at a poultry facility in Vancouver, which I watch or read the USA Today every day, and I see that a lot of the meat packing facilities in the United States have been affected the same way because I guess people work so closely together. So that's going to be an issue. But I think we're getting closer to going back. I play golf, so I'm actually allowed to play golf next week. There's only allowed to be 2 of us, and we have to come in on a certain way. We're not allowed to get within 6 feet of each other. But so we're starting to get a few things that are coming back. I would think that the new normal will be different than the old normal, but we'll be starting, I think, back to some semblance of work here probably in the next 2 or 3 weeks. I'm thinking by mid-May for sure. And how far away are you from getting back to normal there? Do you have any idea? Is the government giving you any indication on when you'll be back to normal?
The normal.
Yes, Patricia.
Probably in Italy, the normally will be in 2-3 months, I think, because now we have a lot of restriction, but we during the first week of May, a lot activity will open again. But it will be very difficult for example, for the restaurant, for the bar, because in this situation, a lot of people too much close, and so it will be very difficult for the restaurant and the bar. I think. For example, in agriculture, no problem. We are open at the moment. Gatavecchi is open. We have the person in the vineyard, in the cellar, to normal operation, bottling, and we sell the wine in all the world. No problem for this. But the problem will be for the work where a lot of people too much close, and so I think that probably in October, September will be a little bit normal, I think, but yeah, not before. I think
it's going to take a long time. Okay, well today we can still talk about wine, so that's the good news, and we're the lucky ones that are still here to drink some wine. So I've got John Clarides dialed in here today too. Just to give you that are dialing in for the first time today a little history before I turn the camera over to other people. I've been in the insurance business for 35 years, have an insurance and financial planning firm in Canada. I do both work domestically here in Vancouver and a lot of work across Canada, but I do a fair amount of international work, particularly for mining companies that have operations around the world. So this time of year right now with this pandemic has been it's been very busy for us because some people have been trapped in mining sites in Africa and other places around the world trying to figure out how they're going to get home. So we've actually been very active. I started to enjoy wine in my 20s, many years ago, and started collecting wine. John Clarides, who is here today, who's going to talk in a few moments, is the owner of Marquee Wine Cellars on Davie Street. I met John, I'm going to guess about 30 years ago, maybe, right, John?
Something like that.
Yeah, and I remember meeting John at tastings that he did at his store. And I went into him one day and I said, I want to take you for lunch because this is about 30 years ago. I said, I'm still really learning about wines and I need to learn a lot more. So I need someone to guide me. And John said the best thing to do is to taste a lot of different wines and kind of figure out what you like, right? And then start to build a portfolio or a cellar based on what you really enjoy. And so I collected a lot of wine. Back in those days, I joined a few wine clubs. One was Umberto Mengi's wine club that he had at El Porto down in Gastown, if you remember that. Yeah. And he would host a dinner about twice a month, and you could stay for the tasting, which I recall was $20 at the time, or you could stay for dinner and they would knock $10 off the tasting down to $10, but of course you paid for the dinner. And then you got to try a bunch of different wines. And the wine that I still never forget that was the epiphanal moment for me in the wine world, particularly Italian wine, was Tignanello. And I was like, wow, this is the best Italian wine I've ever had. And grew a passion for that. That's going back probably 32 years ago. And so I've stayed in touch with John, continued to go to his tastings. And in fact, a number of my friends to this day are people that I met at marquee wine cellars 10, 20, 30 years ago that John would do these tastings in the back. And we really enjoy the wines. I joined the Commanderie de Bordeaux in Vancouver, I guess about 10, 12 years ago. And I also joined the Burgundy group called the Confrérie de Testament. And in 2012, they asked me to become the cellar master or the cellarier for the Commanderie de Bordeaux, and which was a big honor. And I think they just needed some young blood, if you can believe it, that I was young blood. But everybody else was quite a bit older than me, and for the most part still are. And so I got to travel to France to go to Bordeaux, and I fell in love with Bordeaux and started importing wines from producers that didn't have any representation in the Vancouver, British Columbia market space.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, welcome.
Hey.
And so much so that I ended up, the business kind of did pretty well, and we decided to expand and go into Italy. And I started looking up wineries in Italy that had no representation in the BC market, and I came upon the town of Montepulciano because I thought, wow, this is a great town that everyone knows about Montalcino, but Montepulciano doesn't seem to be represented fairly in the BC market space as far as I could see. So I went there. I think, Luca, the first time I met you was in 2013. I think I met you at the winery in 2013, I believe.
2015 was a good year.
For sure.
Good year, yes. Normally, there are excellent years, and I think the four star in 5 star that the year 2015 ever are the real exactly represent the level of the wine. It was very balanced, the weather, not many rain, but is middle perfect balance
Perfect.
between the rain, it was a good year.
Oh, excellent. Good. So, John, maybe you can talk and tell us a little bit about your history and a little bit about Montepulciano and Tuscany, and give us a bit of some insights, please.
Well, my history, I'll try and I'm going to make it brief. Started in '86, selling BC wine from one BC winery. GATT free trade were ratified, and we were allowed to sell imported wine. So I decided I'm going to try and be the best that I can, and started traveling, tasting wines. Mostly, all self-taught. Took some variety of courses over the years, but it's just I read a lot, but I like traveling a lot, and of course it's been curtailed this year. That's how I learn about wine. So let's just Tuscany. I mean, we could spend the whole Zoom meeting just talking about Tuscany, but Tuscany it's a big area, and it's a mosaic of landscapes. 7 different zones. If you're talking, I think of 7 of Chianti, Chianti Classico, Chianti Rufina, Chianti Colli-Senese, Chianti Orientini. And there's a lot. What I love about Tuscany is that they have preserved their micro and mesoclimates. So they haven't gone all monoculture. Monoculture meaning just wine and not anything else. And Tuscany has kept the farms. They'll farm hazelnuts, of course, olives and olive oil, all sorts of different types of fruits, different wild animals, some not so good, especially the wild boars. And so that creates its own little environment. And within Tuscany, there's of course warm sites and cool sites, and wines that have different types of different flavors and different characters to them. And so that's what really I enjoy about going to Tuscany, and that's what I've found out traveling through there over the number of years. We could, like I said, I'm going to get. I haven't been to this winery, so I can't get into the specific details of it. And we can spend a ton of time talking about the different appellations. We need to get to tasting into the wines.
Sure. Well, thanks, John.
My pleasure.
So, Patrizia, do you want to just talk a little bit and give us a little history or about Gatavecchi and how long they've been around and what wines what regions you grow grapes in and make wine in, and just give us a little rundown if you can, please.
But I think that about family Gatavecchi is better to speak Luca, I think, because it's him family. And
okay.
So, okay, Luca?
Yes, for sure, with pleasure. Our family is one of the oldest family of Montepulciano, and our family founded the Consorzio in 965 with other 6 producers of Montepulciano, and start the formal denominazione Vino Nobile di Montepulciano, because in the past was used Vino Nobile di Montepulciano, but is just with the DOC in 965 that was formally decided with the Consorzio the denominazioni. And in that time was just 7 wineries that produce and bottled the wine, because other produce but don't bottle it. And our family have a tradition of bottling Vino Nobile di Montepulciano, and with the other 6 winery, we start the long work, and you know that Vino Nobile is the first Italian DOCG in 78. The first Italian wine with DOCG is that, and in our cellar there are, like in other of Montepulciano, the first experimentation of DOCG with the tasting of a special commission before the bottling. Our family have work of this, and me and my brother, we increase our work buy other vineyards in Montepulciano from 98 to 2007, and our tradition is very close the old cellar of Montepulciano. Many of our customer that we have visit Montepulciano, visit the cellar, and our tradition is very familiar contact also with our customers. And from from the time of last war, the 950 to our shops was open, not just for tourists, because in that time not many tourists visited Montepulciano, but many people of Montepulciano buy wine from Gattavecchi to use every day to drink, because in that time it was not Coca-Cola, it was not other thing to drink, but just water and wine. And I remember when I was young that many people of Montepulciano come in the little shop under my house to drink, to buy wine, to drink home every day. Our family started from about a century with my grandfather, but in that time was very different because it was not so large export. It was not many tourists in Montepulciano like now, and our sales in the shops in Montepulciano are very important because with the larger visits in Montepulciano and our historical cellar, that is one of the 4 historical cellar inside Montepulciano, consent familiar contact with our customer. In the first year 70, we started to export. The first export was in Germany, because many people from Germany come to visit Italy, and in that time Vino Nobile di Montepulciano started the export in the world. After we have a good contact, we had a good contact in the US, and we start also in the United States, and it was very important to increase the sales. In our family, in our vineyards, we work, me, my brother, my sister, but with all the collaborator, there is a very familiar rapporto. We work like
it's very friendly to work together, because
yes, is this. And one problem of that COVID is that one of the best things, and Thomas know very well this, that in Tuscany there is a very beautiful lifestyle, because there is contact, because the people meet from many part of the world, and the wine is a moment that united the people. And you know, in the cellar we have a restaurant, also our restaurant is an osteria, is more osteria than restaurant. But it's very easy to taste the wine with typical food, with pisci, with the bistecca, and it's very difficult imagine to stay distance people between other people of 2-3 meters, because normally when you come stay in our cellar, people of other table speak with the other people. There is a contact, and the wine
sure.
favorite the contact between people of the world. We hope that this time will finish, but we don't know when. Our family now continue with to work also with to open the restaurant. We hope that maybe will be more complicated, but this is our system to meet the people. Now there are other chances like this to meet the people, but for us it's important to have a very familiar and a very direct contact with our customers.
Well, hopefully it gets back to normal very soon. That would be, that's what we're all looking forward to. We're going to drink one of your wines now. For those that have got the lineup in front of them, we're going to try your Rosso, the 2017. What can you tell us about this wine?
Rosso di Montepulciano, the 2017 was a very good year, and very, yes. You see, the Montepulciano Square, that's Tuscany, that's the Renaissance.
Beautiful.
You can see immediately from the label that we are in Tuscany, because now there is a new that from next month we can use the words Toscana under Rosso di Montepulciano. And in the next label, maybe that you will have in Canada, will be right Rosso di Montepulciano, denominazione di origine controllata, Toscana, because there is a big confusion with Montepulciano d'Abruzzo. And this is a little new. About the wine, I think that the Rosso is the chance to drink wine of the quality of Vino Nobile, younger. Is respect at the Vino Nobile is more easy. The grapes are 90% Sangiovese, with the other 10% of Canaiolo and a little bit of Colorino Toscano. But this wine is a little bit tannic. To the smell is classic of Sangiovese with ruby tip of yes, you have right wild flower, and we use the small to compare the Susine. Susine is the prunes. The prunes is typical fruit in Montepulciano, and the small is delicate, not like other wines, not very fruity, but delicate with the note of species. Yeah. And the taste is round, with there is particular of Sangiovese when it's young is a little bit tannic, and these tannin are very lovable with our food, with pasta, with our salami, and cheese is perfect.
Just a couple of notes on Vino Nobile. I've always found Vino Nobile, when I've tasted it, to always have a little bit more muscle, a little bit more power to it. Perhaps maybe, for lack of a better description, maybe not as refined, whatever that means in someone's term, as say a Chianti, classic Chianti, classical, but I always found that they have structure and great acidity. And what I find with them is when they age, all that roughness smooths out, and you have, I don't know if anyone's ever tried a Chianti from the mid-70s, but when they have some age on them, there's this lovely silkiness to the wines. and you go, holy whatever.
Yeah.
I can't believe how good this wine tastes. Vino Nobile, it always takes a little bit longer to come around for some, for one reason. Terroir, the wind, its isolation, maybe genealogical material. I'm not sure why, but that's what I like about it. So that it's not necessarily, if you pick a young one up, it's not necessarily for the faint of heart. But I'm telling you, with food, they're magic. Really, really good. And I found, and I didn't open this wine 30 minutes in advance because I got here like 10 to 3 because I was scrambling around.
That's okay.
Doing stuff.
But it's got a very perfumey nose. It's very dark in color. Like I'm surprised how dark it is, but the nose is lovely to me. It's very perfumey and
beautiful. Yeah. And it's got a savoriness, a dried, Lucas said it, that word broom, a savoriness, whether it's dried teas. I'm not an expert on teas, but dried teas notes and all sorts of other different herbs to it, almost windswept in a sense. And I'm really enjoying it, as I'm actually a group of us get together at 5 o'clock at the Beauties Club and do a COVID, pull up our trunks and we do a little COVID, put some music out. So I'm bringing this with me.
Well, thanks.
So that's going to be good. So I love the Rosso. It's a good gateway into a Vino Nobile, and I think it's a great value too.
Yeah, I think if you're gonna learn about the wines of Montepulciano and Vino Nobile, like Rosso's, got just such tremendous value. Early drinking, as everyone said, I think you need some food with these wines to really enjoy them. They're not necessarily sipping wines on their own, but with food, cheese or whatever you're having, or a lovely meal, they can complement it very, very well. And I think $32 a bottle, like that's pretty good value.
I think the word that comes to mind just came is authentic. It's not trying to be something that it's not. I remember going to Vin Italy 25 years ago, and Cabernet and Merlot and Chardonnay and all these international varieties. I'm going, guys, what about your indigenous varietals?
Yeah, and stick with what you know.
I'm sorry?
Stick with what you know.
Stick with what you know, right? And now we see that, all over the place. Italy has.
Fortunately, we have understand that from the world, from the Tuscany, in the world, the people want Sangiovese from Toscana.
Makes sense.
Because I'm going to Tuscany to have Tuscan wines. Yes, they're super Tuscan, and I understand.
Yes, for sure,
I'm not necessarily looking for another Merlot. I want something that's typically Tuscan. And this, for me, has all the check boxes. Right, Barry and Wendy?
That's correct. Great.
You guys made it in. I saw you having some trouble there, Barry. I'm glad.
We had no sound. I've been using Zoom for weeks and no problem. I couldn't get the sound. I had to go out and then re-sign into the app. So we're glad to be here. The wine is beautiful, beautiful.
Wine's lovely.
So Tommy, we're going to move on to the Vino Nobile, the 2016. The Prinolo. I'm sorry, the 2018. I switched them around.
Yeah, we're going to move on now. We're going to move on to the Boscarelli. So let me tell you a little funny story, Luca, if you don't mind. I told a story last week about my my lovely experiences in France and how the French people, especially in Bordeaux, go out of their way to make you feel very, very important. And the first time I met Luca Gatavecci, I was having just a tremendous lunch that started at around 12, and I think it worked its way into about 3 or 3:30. So it was a very long lunch, and we were drinking just about everything in the portfolio. And I turned to Luca and I said, "Luca, I'm very sorry, but I have to leave." And he said, "You can't leave, Thomas. We have more wine to drink. Where are you going to go?" And I didn't have the guts to tell him at the time that I had another appointment. And so I said, "Well, I just have to leave, right?" And he said, No, have another glass of wine. So I had another glass of wine, and then it got closer to the time that I really had to go to get to my next appointment. and it was what the Buscarelli brothers, who were going to try their wines. And then I said, Luca, I'm really sad, but I have to leave. I'm enjoying myself so much. And he said, where are you going? And I said, well, I'll tell you the truth. I have an appointment, and I have an appointment with another winery, another chateau here in Montepulciano. And he said, oh yeah, he said, who do you have an appointment with? And I told him, well, I have an appointment with the Buscarellis. And he said, the Buscarellis, and he immediately picked up his cell phone and he looked at me before he dialed, and I'm sure it was on speed dial. And he said, we've known each other since we were this tall. He said, we've known each other since we were kids. He said, just wait here a minute. And then he got on the phone, yeah, and talked to them. And then he got off the phone and he said to me, they're not going anywhere today. He said, they'll wait for you. Have another glass of wine. So
Tommy's walking in like this.
oh, so yeah, no, and I think you actually drove us to one of our meetings, Luca, and you've been so kind in hosting some of the guests that I've sent to you to the cantina. And I know Matt Casey is here today. Hi, Matt. He had a great visit with you. Say hello, Matt.
Buongiorno, buonanotte.
Buonanotte, buonanotte.
Julie and I had a bit of a mishap.
Yes,
We were supposed to go to the cantina, but we thought the cantina was at the winery. So we show up and we realize that we're in the wrong location, but it worked out really good because we got a private tour of the winery, and it was the harvest. So we saw all the workers, and Luca was driving his truck through the middle of the vines, and it was just such an incredible experience. So thank you so much for making that happen. It was very special.
You are welcome. You are welcome. I want to say with Buscarelli, we are good friends. In Montepulciano, I am really friend with all the producers. And 2 weeks ago, we was meeting with Luca De Ferrari in the engine distributor. To regards. And,
Look, I have a question for you. What things are you doing in the vineyard to enhance vine growth, make them more healthy, make better, or in the winery to improve the already really good quality that you have? What things are coming down the road?
I am not sure to have understand the question. I'm sorry, because my English is not so good. Patrizia, te hai capito?
Quali sono praticamente le operazioni che fai in vigna per rendere poi il vino, per fare un vino di qualità, insomma, ecco, che cosa...
Okay.
In sintesi è questo.
Okay. Yes, okay. Now, for example, the first thing is when we keep that we cannot produce too much. This is very important for Sangiovese. The first thing is to control the production when we keep, and after is very important work very well and stay in the vineyards. Because the machine can help, but it's necessary also in the summer, in May, in June, the green harvest, and go to control the production, select the grapes in the summer, and after it's very easy. The important is just control the exactly moment of the harvest.
Right.
But it's very important to reduce the production because more production of Sangiovese is less quality, unfortunately. In other place, it's possible with white wines produce like wine like Prosecco in large quantity and quality, but Sangiovese is not possible. And after is very important for me the harvest with the hand, because with the machine is very complicated select the best grapes. We use just people to harvest, and after is very important also the work in the cellar, because from the fermentation, for example, the Rosso di Montepulciano have a little time less fermentation, stay less time with the skin, for don't be too much tannic, because to be drinkable before. But for Vino Nobile are necessary 25 days. And we use also for the best selection fermentation in wood. Now I think the quality is respect for the natural, for the time, for the production, not too much production, for work with passion, go personally in the vineyards, control personally in the cellar. Our dimension consent to control, and it's exactly me that I control all this work. This morning I was to see the young vineyards, because now is moment, for example, that we must work also with the product to defend from peronospora, but it's important don't use too much chemical product. And also this is a very challenge, because it's necessary to reduce these have more conscience of environment, and in the future is also this quality in respect of environment.
Are you organic or switching to organic, or?
We have a little bit the level. We are not organic, but we are the level just under.
Okay.
There is a special agri-quality. The name is agri-qualità. That is the level down. Sometimes is organic. Yes, I don't want to speak bad, because for me the future is that.
Yeah.
But important is to be coherent. Not just write, but do what you write.
Right.
And we have a register where we write all the operation that we do. And is like organic, but is
just a little bit below.
Is 90% to arrive 10% less organic.
It's like Tommy, it's like our diets. We try to eat healthy, but there's that 10% less. That's that little pleasure, right?
So, yes, I know that why this, because there are many situations that is right organic, but in reality is not so different from other. The important is do what you write.
So we have two wines. We've got now the Rosso and the Vino Nobile. Tell us the difference between the two, and how they're made and how they're aged.
The grape are the same. The grape of Rosso di Montepulciano and the Vino Nobile are the same. Normally, to produce Rosso di Montepulciano, we use the younger vineyards. And also the first thing is the fermentation. From the fermentation of Rosso, we think that the life of the Rosso must be maximum 5, 6, 7 years. The Vino Nobile this year at the presentation in Anprimer in Montepulciano, anteprima del Vino Nobile, we have opened a bottle of 50, 60 years old. And many of this wine was very perfect.
Yeah.
And it was all the more important media of the wine, Gambero Rosso, other important media, and was a really surprise of the longevity of Vino Nobile.
But see, what I said about Vino Nobile earlier, it's got lots of acid. And if you want wines to age, you have to have that acidity to them. And that really helps. I remember having some 20, 25-year-old Vino Nobile, and they're just silky and they're smooth and delicious. So when I come to visit you, Tommy, 59, please, 1959.
It's okay.
Which one are we tasting next?
We're going to move on to the Boscarelli, but just before I do, I just wanted to say thanks very much, Luca and Patricia. I know it's very late there. It's kind of 1 in the morning, but I'm very honored to have you.
Thank you for inviting. Thank you so much, Thomas, and thank you to all. And see you in another appointment if you want.
Yes, I'm hoping.
Just a moment.
For example, for Poggio La Sala wines.
Just a moment.
Yeah, for sure. Well, hopefully I'll see you this fall. I'm hoping to get to Italy in maybe September or October, but we just have to hope that we're all opened up for travel by then. But yeah, I've had such a tremendous time when I've come to see you. You've made me feel like part of the family, and I've really enjoyed your wines, and they've sold in our market exceptionally well. You'll be getting a purchase order from us in the next day or two as well, because we've basically sold through everything, or pretty much everything. And the feedback I'm getting from everybody is everyone really enjoys your wine. So thank you so much for staying up late tonight and joining us, giving us some insights. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you to all. And I want to regards with the mask produced from my sister-in-law, the wife of Jonathan, you know, is the chef of the restaurant.
Okay.
Have just produced this. Yes, with you see,
Gattarecchi label.
Gattarecchi
label. Okay.
It was produced with t-shirt.
Well, thank you again. We really appreciate it.
Ciao.
Thomas.
Ciao.
Thank you to all for attention. Thank you.
Okay, ciao. Thank you for all the good stories.
Ciao.
Take care. Okay, so let's move on to the second wine now. And as I mentioned, I've met the Boscarellis a couple of times as well, and been down there to visit them. Their winery, just to give you a little history, started in '62. Third generation of winemakers. Pretty small area, 14 hectares is what they have under vine. The two brothers now, Luca and Niccolo Di Ferrari, are the owners. Niccolo is more of the business guy who does all the marketing for Boscarelli. Luca, who I think the picture went out on today, Di Ferrari is kind of the winemaker. And it's interesting because when I went there in 2013, for the first time, they've got all these little buildings that are kind of separated, and it's kind of like a makeshift winery. It's like this building's here, and you walk on this plank to get to this building, and it was quite funny the way it was laid out. And I was like, they must have started with this one building and then decided, well, we need another building, but let's not expand this one. Let's just build another one, and then let's put tanks over there. And so the first time I was there, like I said, 2013, it was kind of interesting to see it because I'd never seen anything kind of spread out on this property the way it was. And but the wines were excellent, and I enjoyed them. And I went back. I was there in 2018, the fall of 2018, and went to visit them again. And they've obviously done well, and they've expanded, and they've raised the quality of their production facilities as well. So they certainly are more modern age as far as what they're doing with temperature controlled tanks and everything that's more of the modern era. The Prugnolo, which we'll try next, this is the 2018. Prugnolo, by the way, is a synonym word for Sangiovese that seems to be used by the people from Montepulciano. Looking at these two wines, the first thing I noticed, for me at least, is the difference in color. The Gatavecchi Rosso is much darker in color, whereas I find the Boscarelli Prugnolo, or their Rosso, is definitely lighter in color, and quite a bit different on the nose too. The makeup of the wines are pretty similar, both 90% Sangiovese. As Lucas said on the Gatavecchi, about 10% of indigenous grapes go into the other makeup of that. In the Boscarelli, it's 90% Sangiovese and 10% of an indigenous grape called Mamolo. I get a lot different nose too. I find on the Gatavecchi, it's very perfumey, just a lovely smelling nose. Definitely smell of dark fruits on there and dark berries. Whereas I find I get a little more of a berry smell on the Boscarelli, and a little more on the red fruits, a little more of the cherry and strawberry, a bit of spice and a bit of vanilla as well. But just a little bit different for almost a wine that's pretty identical in composition. Although again, this is 1 year younger, but a little bit different both on the palate end and color end and smell for sure.
How far are the sites away from each other?
I would say about 10 kilometers.
10 kilometers?
Yeah.
And I was going to say, ask which way the vineyards, because look, the Boscarelli is almost like a cooler site. Feels like a cooler site than the Gatavecchi.
I think it's lower in that valley there, John. I checked out their soil. It's sandy, alluvial, silt, clay, and stone, so kind of a mix of everything. The other thing that I discovered when I was there, and this is one of the things I'll talk to when we get to the Vinda Novola Riserva, is that they've been replanting at Boscarelli a lot.
Okay.
So these vines might be a little younger, I'm guessing, on the Prugnolo than they might be on the Gatavecchi. That's my guess.
Okay.
But one of the things that we talked about last time I was there is that they had gone through a lot of their replanting, and now they were starting to see the fruits of that. And when we get to the Vinda Novola Riserva, they hadn't made it from like 1992 to 2010, because the quality wasn't there. And in 2010, they finally felt like the vines had aged enough that it was at that right time to make the Riserva, right? So.
Okay. Yeah, it's what you said about valley. For those of you who are listening a little bit new to wine, is we're talking almost virtually same grape variety, same composition. You can taste the difference. So if you have a warmer site, cooler site, of course, warmer is going to give you a little bit more ripeness, less acidity. Cooler site, the other way around. People are planting higher up on the hilltops today because of climate change. So they're still getting acidity, but they want those cool sites. So it all just depends on what you're looking for. Both are really, really good bottles of wine, and wouldn't turn them down if someone poured them for me at a dinner, right? So it's just, you want something fuller, something lighter. So that's just sort of the context.
Yeah, I think spot on. These are different sites, same composition almost, maybe a little different age in the vines, but certainly the Gatavecchi is a bit heavier wine, and the Boscarelli is a little lighter, a little more berry driven, and more of the red berry than the dark berry. That's
a little juicy. I like that. I think that's pretty good, but again, different style.
Yeah, for sure. And I think they both go great with food, like all Italian wines do, right? So,
yeah. As evidenced by what you have in front of you right now.
yeah, I've got a little snack of everything going on here. I got a couple different cheeses, some crackers, some I got some red beet chips, and some great chorizo as well.
Cool.
So let's move on for those that have the third wine today. This is the Vin de Nobola, the 2016 from Buscarelli. Composition is slightly different, but still driven by Sangiovese, which you're going to find all through Montepulciano and Montalcino, for that matter, in Tuscany. The predominant grape is Sangiovese. Here they mix in a little other grapes. Colorino is 5%, Caniolo is 5%, and Mamelot is 5% to come to their 100. About half the production of Buscarelli goes into their Vin de Nobola, so this represents obviously the majority of what they make. And they do make about 6 or 7 different wines in total. One of the things that I tried to get when I was there, but it wasn't bottled yet, was they make 100% Merlot, believe it or not, which is kind of strange to see in Italy, but boy, was it ever good.
I think we tasted, sorry to interrupt, I think we tasted that at one of your tastings.
I'm trying to remember, but they didn't have any production for me to buy, but I'm going to try and bring it in. I think I had the samples right at the.
I think we did, yeah.
Had a sample at the tasting, but they weren't ready to ship it yet. Or whatever. Hoping to get it, but it's a really it was a pretty interesting to get a Merlot out of Italy. I mean, I know that they get blended in on the Super Tuscans for sure, but to see 100% Merlot out of Montepulciano was rare and strange, I guess. But boy, was it ever good. And I thought, wow, we should try some of this. But it had that kind of Italian rusticity and a little bit of saddle leatheriness to it, and that herb character. So definitely when you smelled it and tasted it, it wasn't like a California or a French Merlot. It was Italian in every way.
Yeah, and it was good. It had structure and character to it. I really liked it. I thought it was pretty good.
So this wine, and feel free to jump in, anybody, and comment on what you're drinking and what you like about what you're drinking. But this is, for me, this is definitely more back onto the dark spectrum of fruits. Some dark berries and
spice.
Any questions, Tommy? Listen, is there any questions from anybody out there? Watching.
I'm a little ahead of myself. Which wine are you on right now?
We're on the Vin de Nobola, the third wine, the Buscarelli.
This one here, can you see?
I think it has great.
What year is it?
2016.
2016. Okay.
But feel free to ask about the other 2 wines too. We're just ask any questions. That's what we're here for.
My question is, why am I onto the 5th wine? And
because you started early and you're a really good customer and you're very good wine enthusiast, and that's why I invite you back every week, Craig.
Beautiful.
That's funny.
So now when you get into the Vin de Nobolas, now you're kind of taking a step up from the Rossos in many ways. Probably age of the vines would be one of the first things, but then the second thing would be how long they age the wines for. So the Rossos probably, John, jump in if I'm messing this up, but I'm saying maybe 12 to 15 to 18 months max.
Yeah, and Vino Nobile is
18 to 24, I'm going to say.
By law, right? By law, yeah. And the Italians take their laws quite strictly.
Yeah, and they age their wines in either Allier or Slavonian oak casks, but they're huge casks. They're like between 5 and 35 hectoliters, so they're this massive big cask. So it's not like the French do in these small little, 25 case, whatever that is. I forget.
225 liters, I think.
Yeah, so these things are huge, but they're made out of oak, and that's how they age them, and that's the way they've done it forever. And they turn out some pretty nice wines. And like you were saying earlier, John, if you let these wines sit in your cellar for 5 or 10 years, they turn into something magical. They're definitely more of an acid wine from this region. but that will soften over time, or early right now, having it with some food is perfect, right?
Absolutely. Any other questions? Opening up, I'm scrolling down. I see a lot of people on here. And, you know, please, there's no such thing as a dumb question.
Just dumb people.
Come on, Barry.
Okay, John, what's this wine like down the road? I see it's a 216.
Yeah.
I kind of like this. Certainly for drinking now, I much preferred the first wine.
Right.
I thought it was just great. I thought it had a good body to it. It was beautifully balanced, good value. And this one is, I find it more closed. I find it more tannic, more acid. And my impression that it's way too early to be drinking this wine.
100%. It's like an impetuous, petulant 3-year-old. You have to wait 25 or 30 years before they turn into a decent human being. Maybe not so much for this wine, but nonetheless, this wine, you know, it's pretty tight, pretty acidic, very closed. It doesn't have that California voluptuous. You have to, it's like a good book or a good Italian movie. You got to sit and think about it and discuss it. And that's what I like about European wines in general. So yes, you are indeed right. But I think on a larger scale is that one of the things that young wine consumers are missing out on is, what do older wines taste like? So you and I have been to many dinners together over the last bunch of years. I won't say how many, but a bunch of years. And we've had the privilege to taste a lot of really old wines, which are magical. And for the young drinkers out there, trying to find old Bordeaux or buying Bordeaux and aging it can be a little bit cost prohibitive. You can get some good values, but just as an overall comment. So this is a really good, well, I can't remember how much this wine is, $60 a bottle. I mean, this is a good wine to leave in your cellar for 5 or 6 or 8 years. And to answer the question, how does an aged wine taste? Because I'm scrolling down here and I see a lot of younger drinkers, and again, they haven't had that privilege of tasting. So they can, you know, start their own cellar, 2, 3, 4 bottles at a time, 6 bottles at a time, and put them away. And next thing you know, in 5 or 6 years, they've got 50, 60, 70, 80 bottles of aged wine. And that if purchased properly, will give them a lot of drinking enjoyment.
Barry, I would tell you something also, in that you know, I started buying the Boscarelli wines and the wines from this region. I guess the first vintage I bought was 2010, 2011, the vintages that I bought, and I still got some, and I've opened them up. And it might sound crazy, but I think they put on weight, if that makes any sense, because I think the acidity starts to soften over time and that fruit starts to come up. Whereas, you know, sometimes it's the opposite with California wines. You need that fruit, or sometimes with heavy Merlots, the fruit's so dominant, you need it to soften a little bit. And but these I found, especially with the Boscarellis that I've opened, and is that acidity softens out, it blends better, and then the fruit comes forward, and you go, wow, I think this wine tastes heavier and richer than it did when I first had it a few years ago. So I think these wines, are really built to age. They've got that, as John said earlier, the acid content's there. That's certainly one of the best agers in long-term cellaring of wines is the acidity level, and this has got it for sure.
You know, one of the things that both Tommy and I, and I'm sure Barry and Wendy have learned over the years of tasting wines, note that I didn't say drink, but tasting wines, is...
Speak for yourself, John. You don't know what crowd you got today.
There are no sometimes there are no absolutes. You know, in finance, there's dogmatic. You know, 1 and 1 is 2, but you'll taste the wine and go, well, this doesn't equate to everything I've learned, and it tastes great, and they've done everything differently. So it's just that this is, you know, tasting these wines is just another level of knowledge that you've garnered that can make you or help you assess wines differently. And then you realize that, geez, I've learned so much and I still know nothing. So that's the beauty of it.
Well, we're all still learning, John. It doesn't matter how long we've been in the wine game and enjoying wines. I'm still learning every day something new, and so are you, and so Barry and Wendy. So but that's the fun part about it, is that you're always kind of learning about wine. I just find that it's always enjoyable to open a bottle of wine with friends, especially if there's a bunch of you, so you can try 4 or 5 or 6 different wines together and go, wow, these are all really unique or different. Or this wine I have 6 of, and I opened one 6 months ago or a year ago, and this one is completely different now. It's matured. Exactly. It's in a really happy spot, whereas the last one I wasn't so sure about, right? And,
yeah, no, 100%.
Our old departed friend Albert Gibton used to say, there are no great wines, there are great bottles, right?
Great bottles.
But because you never know from bottle to bottle what you may get. You may open a case and open 2 of them, and they're different from bottle to bottle in the same case. But there's nothing greater, and there's no better thrill when you open a wine and find out it's in a beautiful spot. And
I had that actually. Just as I'm going to ask if anyone has more questions, but I turned 60 last year, so I had a friend of mine source me out a bottle of 59 Lynch Bosch, and man, oh man, that was good. It was pretty.
I've got a 59 Lynch Bosch.
Do you really?
Yeah, I've got one left. I bought some that Jean-Paul Bouchard and I bought in Zacky's in New York, and I have one left. And it's
if it's as good as the one I had, you're going to really enjoy it, and it's got probably another 10 years to go.
I bought it was like 11 or 10 in the lot, and we shared it, and we had 5 each or whatever, and I had one left. But we compared notes, and they're very good. So yeah, wine can turn into a magical thing over time.
Goodbye. Any other questions about, I studied Italian wines, but like Italy, they changed like the wind. Is there's any questions or anything that we can answer?
Yeah. John,
go ahead.
No, Garlic, go ahead.
Oh yeah, so kind of off a little topic here, but where's all the Lambrusco coming from? What region? Is there a specific region?
Yeah, Lambrusco. Oh my God, I knew you'd ask me.
Emilia-Romagna.
Emilia-Romagna. Thank you. You know what? It's funny that you say that. I was thinking, myself yesterday. I'm going, I know nothing about wine, and the amount of books and everything I read, and I keep reading and reading and learning, and I go, I just can't take all this information in. And sometimes you throw out a question like that, where's Lambrusco from? And I was stumped for a second. So thank you for answering that, because there's just so much that comes in your brain. Thank you. And there's 4 types, actually there's 4 different types of clones of Lambrusco, and one of them actually cannot propagate itself, so it has to be planted with the next one so it can flower and bloom and create grapes. And I forget, I took the Italian wine course, and of course in my head it just went in one ear and out the other.
I think it's sorbetto, John.
What's that?
I think it's sorbetto.
Yes. Yeah.
I wanted to ask about the indigenous varieties, actually, if someone could maybe explain a little bit of the characteristics that we would see in the Mamolo, if I'm saying that right? Mamolo?
Mamolo? As a single varietal?
What does it add to the blend, and what does it taste like? That's
that's a really good question. So there's a website that says how many different grape varieties have you had? And I think I was at like 120 or 130. I can't remember out of the 200 or 300. Anyway, so if you look at Tuscany just for a moment, historically it was based on a sharecropper. What's the word? Sharecropper. So the farmer would grow grapes for.
The Mediterranean.
Yes, thank you. And they would have Canaiolo, Malvasia, Mamolo, a couple other grape varieties in there because they were prodigious growing grapes and could, much like BC wines, could bolster up their crops, therefore get more money. so there's a little history. I haven't had a 100% Mamolo. I've had Canaiolo, I've had Malvasia, and they weren't grown necessarily with any care. They were just as an add-on. And guys like Paulo DeMarchi from Isole y Olena, who puts a little bit of actually Syrah and some Canaiolo and a little bit of Malvasia in his Chiantis. Not that because it's tradition, but it just adds a little bit of flavor to them. And I believe he said antioxidant, but I can't remember. It's been years since I've spoken to him. And so, as far as Mamolo as a single grape variety, honestly, I can't tell you that. But I know historically why they've done it.
It adds. I just did a little bit of research on it, and it adds a violet aroma.
There you go.
So aromas.
Yeah, aromas, but so does Canaiolo, and Malvasia gives a viscosity to it, right? If it's picked right, but in an aromatic that Sangiovese didn't have, especially when it was picked in large quantities, but like it was back in the day.
So it's the Cabernet Franc of Italy.
Yeah, exactly.
That makes sense. Hey, just a little bit of overtime because one of the things I wanted to just briefly spend a minute on is a few of you ordered the Boscarelli Vin di Nobola Reserva. So I'm just going to talk about that for a minute or two before we sign off. But this is the 2015 vintage, and I know a few people saw this and ordered it. So if you have this, just some notes on that. As I mentioned from the top, because Boscarelli was doing a lot of replanting, they didn't make this wine from 1992 to 2010, so almost a 20-year hiatus where they didn't produce it because they were replanting and wanted to have the older vines to produce this. But in 2010, they made it. They don't make it every year. They only make it in exceptional vintage years. The makeup of it is 88% Sangiovese, 12% Colorino. And as we talked about earlier, a lot of the wines, when you go through the Italian lineup in Multiple Ciano, are based on the age of the vines and the aging of the wines in casks. So Rosso, we talked about probably 12 months, maybe 16 months. When we get into the Vin di Nobola is 18 to 24 months. And now we step it up a notch again when we go into the Reservas, 28 to 32 months. So that would be one of the differences, is older vines and longer aged in the large Slovenian oak casks. For those that have it, this wine's definitely darker than the Vin di Nobola, but again, a different vintage, 2016, 2015, both pretty solid years out of Italy in this region. And for those that might be following along, my nose on this is very perfumey. Mix of red and dark fruits. Because they only produce this from some of their oldest vines, there's only 800 cases of this produced, so it's very, very small production. I was able to get, I think, 10 or 12 cases of this, so not a lot of it. Sells for a little bit more, of course. Being a Reserva, it sells for $95, but it's a step up, in my opinion, from in quality from the Vin di Nobola. Not necessarily a completely fair comparison, 2016 versus 2015, but it does give you the idea and the level of enhancement when it ages longer and you get those older vines for sure.
Cool. Any last questions, Tommy, or anybody else?
Yeah, John, how popular is biodynamic farming in Tuscany or in Italy as general?
No, what's that? Laura, what was that? Sorry. Ladies, go ahead.
That was a great question.
What's that?
I said that was a great question.
It is a great question. I travel mostly in France, but most of the stuff that I read about and I taste are French wines. There are more and more wineries, especially in like Emilia-Romagna, really, especially in northern Italy. Like Gravner is really huge, more for his natural wines. Les Marches, and in the south, I read more about, again, French wines in terms of biodynamics. not as much as an Italian wines, but I know they're prevalent. It's a growing growing market.
If I can jump in here, actually, it's funny. I was in my family's village a couple of years ago in southern Italy, and they had cow horns buried in the vineyard and had never heard of biodynamic before. When I asked, they said, "Oh, it's something crazy that your uncle makes us do. Probably don't ask any more questions about it." So they're embracing it, I think, in small aspects, but I don't think they necessarily relate it to like biodynamic or Rudolf Steiner himself, or kind of like the Bible of it necessarily. But I think there's parts that are being embraced all over the country.
So were they doing it because
that was what their grandfather taught them.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, exactly. There's some old, I guess, old wives' tales from the old country, whether it's Greece or Italy, that, geez, all of a sudden, it's popular today. Mm-hmm. And they haven't quantified it. I think France has probably quantified it more than Italy because of just their historical political structure. France likes to qualify everything. Italy just says F you to the government or any organization and does things themselves, right? So that's sort of my overall, my impression of what I've seen. But I keep reading more and more about Italian wines, but France is sort of like the cradle. Actually, I'll correct myself. Austria is. Austria has probably more biodynamic farms than those two countries.
And Chapucce's been making biodynamic wines forever, right?
For a long time, yeah.
And Steiner's from Austria, so that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, absolutely. But one of the first biodynamic, I can go on about this, Tommy. I'll stop in a second. One of the first biodynamic wines I brought in was from Burgundy, and Thomas has bought this wine, the Guillemot Michel, Macon Clissé. Remember that wine? We serve it at the Burgundy dinners. And that's been biodynamics for, I've been bringing that wine almost for 30 years. And it was long before Lafon or any of the Burgundian producers were making biodynamic wines.
But one of probably the biggest success stories in the biodynamic world was probably Ponte Canet, right? I mean, Ponte Canet and Bordeaux made wines that were like everyday wines. See, Matthew, that were like, 20, 30, 40 bucks a bottle and got like 86 to 88 points or whatever, or 90 points. And then all of a sudden they went biodynamic, and all of a sudden their points went up, and they got a couple of years in a row where they got 100-point wine, and all of a sudden the price went up.
Yeah, and there was, I think 2007, they had to kind of use copper and kind of decertify and then come back again. But anyway, does that answer that question for Barry, for the biodynamics in Italy?
Yeah, I just wasn't aware of much. I mean, where we've seen it, where we first saw it really was in Antial winery with Alvaro Espinosa from Chile.
Oh, yeah, but okay. Yeah, but you got to remember Chile, it has its own unique set of circumstances in that you've got the Antarctic in the south. To the east, you've got the Andes. To the west, you've got the Pacific Ocean, and up north, the Atacama Desert. So if you're a bug or a louse trying to come in, you're either going to freeze, drown, get burnt, or die fall off a cliff. And for those of you who have been to Chile, when you arrive in Chile, your luggage is x-rayed looking for fruits and vegetables. And if you get caught, it's a $400
right.
fine. They take it is one of the last kind of micro or macro areas that are true to what maybe a grape is supposed to taste like in the world, because they haven't had phylloxera. So, that should answer it yourself. I mean, they have some really cool soils and some cool terroirs.
Yes.
Right?
Keep everything out.
Well, exactly. It's an trying to get in there. It's inhospitable. And once you're in there, it's pretty fertile, right? So yeah. It's a cool area. And much like parts of Italy, when you go to the wine regions, they're in the middle of nowhere. And I mean, nowhere. If BC could grow grapes up in Williams Lake or Fort St. John, that would be the equivalent.
Yeah. You're
in the middle of nowhere. Like, if you don't have a driver, you're hooped.
Listen, there's been a couple of times where my Google Maps really messed me up, and I ended up in vineyard farm back fields. And I said to the guy, "Why don't they put signs on the road?" And he goes, "They used to have signs on the roads, and then the government thought it was dangerous, so they took them all down." And I go, "No, it's pretty."
This is what they did.
Driving around trying to find it. I actually had this little car when I went to see. I think it might have been the Boscarellis the first time in Italy, and I got stuck. I backed it up, and I actually got it stuck on this little front wheel drive car. I got stuck in the vineyard, and my girlfriend at the time, I said, "Well, you're gonna have to drive, and I'm gonna have to push this thing because otherwise we're stuck." And I'm phoning the vineyard, and nobody speaks English, right, at all. And I'm like, "I can see your chateau from here, but I can't get there, and it's too far to walk, and it's muddy and dirty, and my car's stuck." And I'm like, "Oh, just here we go. I'm just going to have to push this thing until I got to get it off." And then I finally found my way around and made my way in. But yeah, Italy's got vineyards in weird places, right?
Well, and it's a natural fit to be organic and biodynamic and self-sustaining because there's not a lot of other people around there, right?
Can you just go over a few food pairings that you would suggest with these wines?
Sure. Tommy, do you want to handle that? Do you want me to take care of it?
Well, I always find that the wines from a region go best with the foods from a region, right? So for me, like French food and French wine are probably a really great combination, and that's probably why they've been making those wines in those regions, and they've adapted their wines to their food or their food to their wines for thousands of years, right? So I find Italian food goes really well with Italian wine. So, as Luca mentioned earlier, these wines have got enough acidity that they can carry anything with cream, of course, but they can carry probably tomato stuff as well. But he said steak, but he even said on the rosso fish, right? So if you get a light enough Italian wine, I can't see why fish couldn't go with it. But on the heavier wines, I'm a red meat person myself, so I like red meat. Are these wines strong enough to carry lamb? I think with the acidity they are, especially when they're young. They're probably too elegant as they age to, in 5 or 10 years' time, to necessarily carry lamb. But certainly red meats for sure. John, throw in a couple.
Yeah, I'd like to throw in, like, if you can handle it, wild boar, anything with any type of stew, any type of hearty stew would work exceptionally well with these wines. Keep the foods as simple as possible, and you'll enjoy it. They're not for light ceviche seafood dishes. These are, if you want, these are fall wintry wines. I mean, yes, we can drink them this time of year, but they're for fall wintry wines. So a little richer, a little bit heavier foods, but not not over the top. But I go back to wild boar, lamb, steak. Those types of dishes work really well. Pasta sauces, but like a ragu or something with some chorizo in it, or some type of meat to give it some backbone for these, to help these wines taste well with them. Taste well with food. Sorry.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. This has been the longest session we've had, but we've had some great speakers. Thanks to Luca and Patrizia from Getavecchi, and thank you, John, for all your contributions today. I really appreciate you dialing in and being part of it. So thank you all for joining, and look forward to seeing you again. Hopefully you'll dial back in. We're doing this again, Mark, I believe, Rajni, we're doing it in 2 more weeks, right?
Yes.
Okay, so hopefully we'll see you 2 weeks from today. Hopefully I chat with all of you, or we have some communication between now and then. So enjoy your weekend, everyone, and thanks for dialing in today.
Thank you. Have any questions?
Thank you, everyone.
Grazie. Ciao.
Thanks, Tommy.
Cheers, Craig.
Thanks, Tommy.
Cheers. My pleasure. Good seeing you guys.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Tommy.
Thanks, Barry.
Yeah, thanks, John, too.
Bye, Michael.
Take care. Thanks.
Hey, Galen, how are
Bye,
you?
Riley.
Hey, guys.
It's like reliving the Waltons. Bye, John Boy.
Bye, Wendy.
That loves me by the Golden Gate Bridge right now.
Bye, Mark.